Hey, do me a favor. I'd love for you to take out your phone because I want to ask you to do a little exercise for me as we kick off this morning. And dads in the room, this may be the one time when you're not asked to get off your phone, but it's okay to be on your phone. In fact, you can just be on your phone for the whole service if you'd like to. If you're brand new to church, this is maybe your way of being able to check out what's actually on your Instagram feed or something during the service. But I'd love for you to do a little exercise for me. I'd love for you to write down, maybe open your notes app, perhaps open a text message. Be sure not to send it to somebody though. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to write down a recent expectation that you had that went unmet. Okay, a recent expectation that you had that went unmet. I'm going to give you a moment just to write it down. And I would encourage you just to keep it light. So don't write my mother-in-law, she didn't fill in the blank, whatever, or she fill in the blank. Keep it light. Like, hey, I went to Coles the other day, I was trying to get some fruit loaf, and there was no fruit loaf there or something. Keep it light. Doesn't need to be a thunderstorm. More like a passing shower if it was a weather report. An expectation that went unmet. Okay, just write it down on your phone. It's really important that you write it down because we're going to come back to it later on this morning, and we're going to walk through a simple little exercise that I think will be really helpful when it comes to healthy relationships, because that's what we're doing right today here at Lifepoint. Is we're starting a brand new message series. If you're brand new to church or new to Lifepoint, a message series is just simply kind of a few weeks around a conversation, a similar conversation from different perspectives and what God has to say about it through His Word. And so today, as we kick off this series, Healthy Relationships, I want to share with you an expectation that I had that went unmet in the last 12 hours, okay? So Jem mentioned that I flew all the way up here from Sydney to speak today. I actually live here in Mango Hill, all right? So it's a very long story, but we are about to add more children to our family this very week. My oldest son, Xavier, is getting married on Friday this week. And so because of poor planning on my part and a surprise celebration for my wife's birthday, which has been going on all year. She's turning 29 again this year. And so we've been going through a whole year of celebrations. Because of a number of circumstances, I found myself in Sydney, had to fly back up here to be able to speak today. And I'm actually flying back down to Sydney tonight. When I arrived at Brisbane Airport late last night, I was so excited. I had pre-booked my Uber, went to the Uber place. He was already there, got in my car. I said to the guy, hey, listen, I don't normally do this, but if you'll just kind of bear with me, I'd love to just sleep on the way back to the house because I normally chat with the Uber drivers. I love asking questions. And so I slept on the way back to the house. When I got back to the house, I thought, because we have 3 grown children who are all out of the house, we're empty nesters now, I thought that I was coming home to an empty house. But on the driveway was my youngest son who lives on the Gold Coast. There was his Toyota Yaris. I call it a helmet on wheels. It's this little bubble on my driveway. And I thought, oh, Miles is home, must have come home for the weekend for some reason. And so I had the little garage door opener with me. And so I click the button and I go into the house. And then I go to my bedroom and the door is locked. And I'm like, what is going on? My expectation was my Uber driver would pick me up. That worked out well. The flight was on time. That worked out well. It was a late night. I'd go through the garage. I'd go straight into my bedroom. I'd get into bed, go to sleep, and come to Lifepoint this morning and enjoy a great Father's Day with you guys. But the door was locked. So I knocked on the door because I knew that my youngest son, well, I didn't know, but I wondered, did he decide just to sleep in the comfy bed of my bedroom rather than his own bed? And so I knocked on the door. There was no response. I went to the kitchen, went to grab like a knife or something to kind of push that button in, you know, how you can release the door. And still I couldn't get it open. So finally I knocked again. What I didn't know is that on the other side of the door was my son thinking somebody had broken into the house because he had no idea. He had no expectation that I was coming home this weekend. He thought I had gone to the wedding and he would see me on Thursday and Friday for the wedding. So because he had an unmet expectation, he was like manning up. He had his fists ready. And he thought, man, whoever comes through that door, he literally told me, they're going to eat my fist. That's what he told me afterwards. And so I finally said, Miles, are you in there? And he heard my voice, finally opened the door, and I was like, get in your own bedroom. What are you doing? So I can go to sleep. Unmet expectations, here's the deal. Unmet expectations are the number one cause of relational conflict. In fact, I want you to think back to any conflict you've ever had. And throughout this morning, I would love for you to prove me wrong. I'd love for you to come up to me after the service and say, actually, Jason, there's another way that conflict happens, and it has nothing to do with expectations. I'm yet to find a conflict that wasn't caused by unmet expectations. I expected to come home. By the way, my son Miles and I, we didn't have a conflict. He didn't punch me in the face or anything like that. But I came home expecting to go straight into my bedroom and enjoy a good night's sleep. My experience over here was vastly different to that. And every conflict I've ever experienced has always been a gap between what I experienced and what I was expecting. I was expecting one thing, but I experienced something else. And this gap between the two is the cause of every single relational conflict. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been frustrated, annoyed, maybe even angry with somebody, and they had no idea that they had done anything wrong? Have you ever had that experience? Or let's flip the question around. Has somebody ever been frustrated, annoyed, or angry with you, and you had no idea what you did wrong? Miles, last night, that was his experience. I was frustrated with him, and he had no idea what he had done wrong, although quickly he discovered, I shouldn't have slept in Dad's bed. Here's the deal. Whatever expectation that went unmet for you recently, that light expectation that I asked you to write down, it's because you expected something and you experienced something else. That's the cause of every single conflict in a relationship. But before we beat up on expectations too much, I want to just clarify something. Expectations are not all bad. Not every expectation is a bad thing. But there is a difference between what I would call an unhealthy expectation and a healthy expectation. There are unhealthy expectations and there are healthy expectations. And I want us to dive into a really powerful book in the Old Testament this morning to help us understand the difference between an unhealthy expectation and a healthy expectation. Now, if you're brand new to church, brand new to the Bible, I don't know how you landed here today. Maybe somebody promised you, if you come to church with Dad today, we will take you for a free lunch after the service. I have no idea how you landed here today, okay? But this book that I want us to take a look at is in the first half of the Bible, which oftentimes we refer to as the Old Testament. It's actually the Jewish scriptures. And because Christians believe in Jesus, the Messiah, who was a Jewish man, they took the Jewish scriptures because Jesus believed them, and they bolted them, they kind of attached them to the New Testament, which is our Christian scriptures, and the two things became the Bible. We have the Old Testament, Jewish scriptures, the New Testament, all of the things that were written to the church after Jesus was here. We put them together, and it created the Bible. But I want to take you back to a book called Proverbs that I think can help us understand the difference between unhealthy expectations and healthy expectations. In Proverbs, by the way, there is so much wisdom to be found. And if you're not a Bible reader, maybe you've never read the Bible before, I actually would encourage you, I would even dare you, I might even double dog dare you, to take the book of Proverbs and maybe just kind of read through it to see if you might find some wisdom for living, because I'm absolutely certain, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you will discover some incredible wisdom for living. Relationships is a category that in Proverbs chapter 18, there's a lot that we unpack there. But in the book of Proverbs, I want to just clarify, the book of Proverbs is filled with a number of principles, and I want to encourage you, don't get them confused with promises. There are a number of principles in Proverbs that are not necessarily promises. In fact, today is Father's Day, and there's a proverb that oftentimes gets used when people speak on Father's Day in churches. The proverb goes something like this: train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. That is a principle, not a promise. There are many parents that have been disappointed over the years because they thought that was a promise and their child didn't continue the direction that they raised them in. That is a principle, not a promise. So don't get them confused as you're reading through the book of Proverbs. But let's take a look at Proverbs chapter 18. And I want us to look at specifically a couple of verses from this particular chapter in this book that highlight for us the difference between healthy and unhealthy expectations, healthy and unhealthy relationships. The first verse is this, Proverbs 18, verse 2, and it reads in this way. We'll bring it up on the screen. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. The foolish man is a person that we see all throughout the book of Proverbs, and then we see wise people all throughout the book of Proverbs. And the writer here is saying that a foolish person is someone that doesn't seek understanding, but they love sharing their own opinions. They love to hear about their opinions, but they're not really interested in learning about what other people think. When it comes to expectations, a healthy expectation comes from actually understanding where the other person is coming from. Like my son Miles, for example, understanding where he was coming from when he chose to sleep in my bed last night, locked the door when I wanted to go into the bedroom, saved me from punching him in the face. I'm kidding, I would never punch him in the face, but I had to seek to understand rather than airing my own opinions in that relationship. The next proverb that I want to share with you in chapter 18 is found, let's go to the next slide. In verse 13, it says, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. To answer Miles when I'm banging on the door, talking over him before listening to where he's coming from, the writer of Proverbs is saying that is foolishness and it will lead to shame. It's folly, it's shame. He continues, he goes on, he says, next verse, in 15, he says, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. The heart of the wise person, the discerning person, is somebody that is constantly looking, seeking to understand, where is the other person coming from? Where is their expectation coming from? Or is it possible that I have an expectation that they weren't even aware of? That's what the discerning person says. And finally, in Proverbs 18:17, in the final verse, it says this, in a lawsuit, imagine the scene, we're in a courtroom. In a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right. Whenever you hear one side of the story, you think, oh, that seems reasonable. Oftentimes you're like, yeah, that person had a really tough go. Until someone comes forward and tells the other side of the story. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, wait a second, there's different perspectives on this expectation. So here's what I'd love for you to do. I want you to go back to your phone and I want you to look at that unmet expectation that you had this morning. Or maybe it was this past week. Maybe somebody you texted didn't text you back. I don't know what the unmet expectation was, but I want you just to think about this unmet expectation. Because remember, not all expectations are bad. There's healthy expectations, there's unhealthy expectations. Not all expectations are bad. So here's the million-dollar question when it comes to expectations. How do I determine what is a healthy expectation versus an unhealthy expectation? I want to give you a simple framework this morning that I think will help you in determining what's a healthy expectation versus an unhealthy expectation. And this framework has been so helpful for me over the years. I used it this morning when my son Miles and I woke up and we finally sat down and had some breakfast together. I actually worked through this framework with him this morning when it came to expectations. When identifying an expectation, I want to invite you to consider 4 things or 4 questions to ask when it comes to an unhealthy expectation. The first question is this: was I aware I had that expectation in the first place? The unhealthy expectation oftentimes is an unconscious expectation. That's the first filter when you're thinking about healthy versus unhealthy expectation. Oftentimes, an unhealthy expectation is unconscious to begin with. I didn't even realize last night when I showed up at my house that I have an expectation that Miles doesn't sleep in my bed. I didn't even think about it. I was completely unaware of the fact that I had an expectation that he wouldn't sleep in my bed when I'm out of town. I had no idea. It was an unconscious expectation. The next question that I think you have to ask is this: is my expectation realistic? Is there a track record of whether or not that person has the ability to fulfill the expectation that I have? See, not only are unhealthy expectations ones that we carry that are unconscious, they oftentimes are unrealistic expectations. The greatest pain I've ever experienced in my life happened about 5.5 years ago, right here in Moreton Bay. It all came down to I had an unrealistic expectation of a group of people here in this area. Greatest pain in my life. When I looked through the 50 years that I've been alive, at all the pain and conflict that I've had in relationships, the greatest one came down to the fact that I had an unrealistic expectation of a group of people. Unhealthy expectations oftentimes are unconscious, oftentimes they're unrealistic, but not only that, oftentimes they've never been spoken. They're an unspoken expectation. I've never said to my son Miles, when I'm out of town, I would prefer that you don't sleep in my bed. I've never said that to Miles, not one time. It was unconscious. Is it unrealistic? Absolutely not. He could sleep in his own bed. He's a 20-year-old kid. But I'd never spoken it out loud to him. An unspoken expectation. And then finally, the final filter, or the final point in the filter of these unhealthy expectations is this: has it ever been agreed to? I've never spoken to Miles about it. So therefore, Miles has never agreed to not sleep in my bed when I'm out of town. He's never said, Dad, when you go away, I promise I'm never going to sleep in your bed. Not only was it unconscious, unrealistic, unspoken, it had never been agreed upon. So when it comes to healthy expectations, it's actually the opposite of these four things. Let's bring them up on the screen. Healthy expectations are ones that I'm aware of. I'm aware I'm carrying this expectation. It's realistic. There's a proven track record that somebody's able to actually follow through and do what I'm expecting. It's been spoken about. I've actually mentioned it to them. I've actually clarified the expectation that I have with them. And then finally, it's been agreed upon. I don't know how many times I've been in Kohl's, walking through Kohl's, and I expected a certain thing to happen. And then I work through this filter, literally in the supermarket, in the grocery store, and I go, wait a second, Kohl's never agreed to fill in the blank. Or maybe it's a relationship that I have in the workplace, and I say to myself, I have an expectation here, and I have to be careful because that person has never agreed to what I'm expecting of them. Or maybe it's in a family relationship, and that person has never agreed to the thing that I'm holding as an expectation. Here's the bottom line. Healthy expectations, the only way an expectation can be healthy is when it is mutually agreed upon. That's the only time an expectation can really be valid and really be healthy is when it's mutually agreed upon. Now, I recognize some of you here this morning, maybe you're brand new to church or you're watching online and this is your kind of first church experience. Somehow you landed here. I don't know how you got here. And you may be saying, Jason, I love the Proverbs. Not sure if I believe everything in the Bible yet or not. But I want to just kind of leverage a study to help you understand the importance of what we're talking about this morning. The university in the United States, Harvard University, has done the longest ever study on human happiness. It's actually called Harvard's Longitudinal Study on Human Happiness, aptly named. And here is what they've discovered. After studying a number of human beings, mostly men, for over 100 years now, they've been studying these people. They've discovered this. It is not money, achievement, or status that leads to happiness. The single greatest in this longest study ever in human happiness, The single greatest factor that leads to health and happiness is good relationships. So if the number one cause of conflict in relationships is unmet expectations, unhealthy expectations, and if the single greatest factor of health and happiness for human beings is good relationships, I think this is something we've got to pay attention to. If this is the greatest thing that can bring health and happiness to our lives, and if it's also the single greatest thing that can create conflict in relationships, we've got to pay attention to unmet expectations. So, let me invite you to take out your phone again and look at the unmet expectation. And I want to walk you through just kind of an expectation checkup this morning. Answer this question. Maybe it's on your phone already, or maybe it's something else going on in your life. Where is your relationship? Where in your relationships is there some tension in your life at the moment? Just think about where in your relationships is there some tension in your life at the moment? The answer to that question for me is really easy. I don't know if you've ever experienced a wedding. I call weddings and funerals the biggest pressure cooker of expectations of any event in any family. Imagine hundreds of people coming together, each with their expectations of what the wedding should look like. It is the biggest pressure cooker. So for me, I would answer this question: where in my relationships is there some tension right now? It has a lot to do with a big event coming up this Friday. And so I'm practically asking myself these questions, and I want to invite you to ask these questions in the checkup as well. Here's the question. Is my expectation something that I'm aware of? Is it conscious? Is it conscious? Where in your relationships is there some tension, maybe because of some unmet expectations? And am I aware that I'm even carrying this expectation? Is it conscious? Is it realistic? Is there a proven track record that the people that I'm expecting to fill in the blank actually have the ability to be able to do that? Is it something that I've spoken about? Have I clearly communicated my expectation around this area, this issue? And then finally, this is the kicker, this is the gold. Has it been mutually agreed upon? I've been a pastor now for many years, and I've sent many text messages to groups of people as it relates to ministry. Text messages like, hey, we're going to start this service a little bit earlier this week. Hey, would a few of you mind showing up and helping me set up the room? And I've shown up on that particular day after sending that text message out, and I've found myself alone in the room wondering, why did nobody show up to help? I sent the text message. But I never asked, if you would be willing to join me and help me set up the room, could you just give me a thumbs up? There was no agreed upon expectation. I just sent out a message. I spoke it, but it never was mutually agreed upon. So I want to invite you just to go through this little checklist when it comes to the expectations that are unmet in your life right now. And then I want to give you a challenge for this week. This is a little expectation challenge. And this might be stepping on toes for some of you, but I just want to invite you to go with me just for a moment. Good news is Dan will be back on, or somebody else will be back on next Sunday. The guest speaker will be gone. You can come back next Sunday. It'll be all okay. But here's my expectation challenge. If you're experiencing some tension in a relationship right now, can I invite you, can I challenge you this week to ask maybe a couple of questions around that tension? Maybe even have a conversation with a person that there is tension with. And I want to give you some phrases that you could use so that you don't have to make it up on your own. Here's the first phrase that you could use. Hey, we'll go to the next slide. Hey, fill in the blank. Can I clarify an expectation with you? It's a great way to start the conversation and just say, hey, can I clarify an expectation with you that I'm carrying? Or maybe another way to say it is this. You go to the next slide. Hey, I realized I may have an expectation I've never made clear. Can we talk about that? Hey, I'm carrying an expectation, and I don't think I've ever spoken about it. Would you mind if we just chatted about that for a moment? See, unmet expectations are the number one cause for conflict in relationships. And if we want to have healthy relationships, here's the bottom line. Healthy relationships, they begin with healthy expectations. Healthy relationships, they begin with healthy expectations. Could you imagine, just imagine for a moment, imagine your workplace if everyone carried healthy expectations in the workplace. Imagine the difference that would make for a moment. Just imagine that. Imagine in your family the difference this could make. If everyone in your family said, hey, I'm going to have healthy expectations in relationships. Or imagine in this church community. Imagine if everybody came in here and said, hey, I'm not going to carry an unhealthy expectation about how the service is run, or how children's ministry is done, or what volunteering looks like in our church. I'm actually going to clarify expectations because I want to have healthy relationships. Could you imagine the difference that would make in a church community if we had healthy expectations with each other? Imagine the difference this could make in our community. And let's go even further. Could you imagine the difference this could make in our country if we all said, hey, I'm not going to have unhealthy expectations of people. I'm not going to have unhealthy expectations of our politicians or anybody in leadership. I'm going to have healthy expectations when it comes to relationships. Could you imagine the difference this could make? I want to just kind of circle back around with my son, Miles. I love Miles. I love him to death. And so I actually called Miles on my way here. And I said to Miles, by the way, there was really no conflict last night, but I did want to clarify expectations with Miles. And I called Miles before I came to church this morning, and I said to Miles, hey, listen, I love you so much. Anytime you need to come home, you can sleep in whatever bed, any bed in the house, because I love having you home. But can you agree to one thing? Don't lock my door. And he said, you know what, Dad? I can agree to that. We clarified expectations. He can sleep in any bed in the house. I don't really care, but I would like to be able to get into my own room. We clarified the expectations. Imagine the difference this would make in relationships if we had healthy expectations. Father, I thank you. I thank you so much for the gift of your word. Thank you for modeling for us what healthy expectations look like. Thank you for making it so clear that we don't have to do anything to be accepted by you. It was all done by Jesus. Thanks for clarifying that expectation that Jesus has done it all for us, and we don't have to do anything but to simply come to him. Thank you for modeling that for us. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We really hope you enjoyed that. Two quick things before we go, okay? One, we'd love to connect with you. Go to our website, lifepoint.org.au, hit connect, and just give us your details. Someone from our church will be in contact with you. And the second thing is, if you live in the area, around the kind of Moreton Bay or North Brisbane, come along to a service, 8:30, 10 o'clock and 5 p.m. We'd absolutely love to see you here on a Sunday.